Hey everybody, so I'm going to be doing a review of the Holybro PDBOSD that meets up with Race 32 flight controller. My name is Will, we.will_FPV on Instagram, and I had the pleasure of doing this review for you. I've got one of these mounted on my Krieger, and so far I'm really enjoying it. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right to it. Alright, so what we're looking at here is the top side of the PDBOSD, and you're going to have your positive negative for your battery terminal. You're going to have 3 pads for each of your motors, and really you're going to be using 2 of those pads for a standard quad setup, which is going to be your B+, which is going to be your positive, and then the G, which is your negative. You're also going to notice that there are 2 plugs on the top of this. One of those plugs goes to for the power, and then the smaller plug is your OSD on-screen display, and both of these plug right into the flight controller, Race 32. Alright, so if you notice on the bottom, you're going to have 6 solder pads. 3 of those are for your camera, and 3 of those are going to be for your VTX. On the far left of those 3 pads, you're going to have your video in, which is going to be your yellow or whatever color comes with your camera. But it's your video in from your camera, your ground, and then you're going to have a 5-volt out to that camera. And then the fourth one is going to be your video, your 5-volt for your VTX, and then the ground next to that, and then your video out for your VTX. And you're going to want to mount solder to those pads, so you'll have your the on-screen display. And then also, if you notice at the very top, there's also solder pads for your battery terminals as well, your positive and your negative.
This is a typical layout of the Holybro PDBOSD. This one's mounted on my Krieger, so this layout is a little bit different, and it will just depend on what you're mounting it in. That's going to cause it to be set up a little bit different. So typically I would say this is the front side of the PDB and this is the back of the PDB. On my Krieger, I wasn't able to do that because the house sits almost flush with the sides of the structure. So I went ahead and I mounted this as being the front and this side as being the back, and running these straight up the side inside. And then for this right here, these are your positive for your battery terminal and your negative for your battery. I have them mounted on the bottom side, which I showed you in the previous picture, and I have those running out the back, which made it simpler for myself. On this side, you'll see the G is going to be your negative, it's your ESC, which is the ground, and then the B+, which is the positive for your ESC. They were really easy to solder to, didn't have any issues soldering to this board. And then something else you'll notice on the top right here is your this port right here is for your OSD, and then this port is for the power. So you'll go ahead and you will go ahead and just plug this in to that one. Now this flight controller, or this PDB, comes with the recommended ports and wires that connect to your flight controller. So let me just go ahead and get this thing in, and then I'll continue. So pretty simple layout. Typically you'd think that they would go right on top to the flight controller, but for myself I was not able to do that in this build, which wasn't a problem. It's still really simple to do. I was able to just go ahead and mount it sideways and continue on. I'm getting my flight controller right here ready. This This is the flight controller, the Race 32, that meets up with this PDB. So this is going to be the front. As you can see, this is the front and that's the back. So basically what I did was ran these wires underneath and then secured the flight controller to the top. I'm just going to do a couple really quick just so I can give you an example of how this is done. Okay, so from there, you take your power and then your OSD, and then the cables are plenty long enough for me to go ahead and insert them right here, and then your OSD, which you have your power, and then your OSD, and it specifies that on the board as well. So, and then with the size of the cables, there really is no putting them in the wrong openings, the wrong slots. And let me just get this in there. There you go. There's no finding a 5 volt or a 3.3 volt breakdown to mount your flight controller. And this I have not depinned this one, this Krieger, so I have everything just ready to be plugged in and set up. So overall, this ended up being a very simple build, due to the fact that it was pretty well laid out. I like the layout of this. It was very straightforward and simple. There was no looking up online for several different types of directions or what I needed to do to bring the power down for the flight controller. This was pretty much set up so I didn't have to do that. And yeah, other than that, it was very easy to install. As you can see, just putting it together was fairly simple. Alright, so what I'm going to show you right now is a typical on-screen layout that shows up on your screen depending on your configurations. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in real quick, and then you get your versions of the flight controller, the OSD, and it's hard to see on this one. I think it's just the screen of this, which is different in my Fat Sharks. But you can see down at the bottom it shows you that it's disarmed, your flight mode, and then typically right here, and I'll try to show you that here in a second, is your battery voltage, and then up here on the top on this side is your flight time. So if I go ahead and arm it, it'll show you your other mode that you have enabled. I have acro or air mode enabled as soon as I arm the quad, and then when you disarm, all your flight statistics show up on the screen. Your flight time, distance, max altitude, max speed, milliamps used, and then your max amps. And that all just depends on your configuration as far as if you have like a GPS or anything else like that. So for myself, I don't have the GPS, so I'm not going to get the distance, altitude, or speed, but it does show up the milliamps used and the maximum amps that I drew off this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like through a set of Fat Sharks, which is might be a little difficult, but bear with me. I will try to get you the best view. So if you can see right here, like when you have it armed, that display, your statistics go away, and then your top left, your battery voltage, and on the top right, your flight time, as well as the modes that are enabled on the left towards the middle. And then again, when you disarm, all your flight statistics. So that's the typical layout from the on-screen display.
Alright, so just a quick wrap up on this, and I'll just give you my thoughts on it. This was a very simple build for myself, and I really enjoyed the layout of it. Again, I'm going to state everything was easy to solder to it. The ports and the plugs from the power board to the flight controller made it really easy. There was no guessing or taking a voltage meter to check how many volts are actually coming out of the pads that you're soldering to power your flight controller. Everything is it's laid out, it's simple, and it's pretty straightforward. There are instructions for it, and the instructions let you know where everything goes, but for myself, instructions weren't really needed. So I appreciate you watching this and taking the time. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe and like it. Thank you very much.